T minus 30 seconds. T minus 20 seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Trap Talk Network, the coolest reptile network in the world. Welcome to All Monitor Talk. I'm your host, Kat, and with me is Mike Stefani.
Hey, how y'all doing? Yeah, good job, Kat. See, now you got nothing to worry about. You did great.
Okay.
So I would imagine, there we go. So come on, please, everybody. We got a great guest today. It's all kind of coincides with USARC, but join USARC at any level that you can. These people fight tirelessly for our rights to keep these animals, which these shady Congress people and legislatures come after us in the middle of the night. Join USARC today, donate, subscribe, like all their posts, and look out for their attention posts on legislature that's trying to pass through. So thank you very much. And today's guest, we have Tony Wigley from Responsible Reptile Keeping, which is like a European, help me out here, European type USARC thing. You're fighting for our rights.
Kind of, yeah. We're actually an international organization, but we're based in Europe, so we have a lot of contact in Europe. But you can kind of say we're like USARC, but not really. We're more interested. USARC work on a legislative level, and while we are politically active, we work more on the media side of things. If you think of us as kind of like a media department for the international reptile hobby and community, because at the moment other people are saying stuff about us in the media that's BS, and we're trying to counteract that. That's really our job. A media department that supports USARC essentially.
Okay, and so how do you do that where you are? Like, what kind of campaigns do you run?
Well, there's a few ways that we work. If you think about all the stuff you see about reptile keeping online, all of the BS that you see that that the animal rights campaigners come out with, they say that we don't know how to care for our animals and they all suffer bad welfare, which of course can happen, but on the whole, it's bullshit. They say that all of our animals are going to become invasive, which happens sometimes, but not very often, and largely it's bullshit. Say that we take all of our animals from the wild, which again is bullshit. They say that you can catch salmonella and maybe COVID from your animals, or another great pandemic because reptiles are disease-ridden. You know, mostly bullshit. And lastly, they say that all of our animals are going to eat our children, which again, we know is bullshit. But these are the lies that animal rights campaigners come out with, and they spread this propaganda online and on the mainstream media. And unfortunately, sometimes our legislators and politicians and journalists believe them. They don't know any better. And one of the problems that we've got is nobody puts across our side of the story in media very well. And I think it's about time we took control of the narrative and explained our side of the story and told people the truth about reptile keeping, because all of those things happen. They happen, but very, very rarely. And it's not a big enough reason to ban everybody from keeping reptiles, to make crazy laws that make it difficult. So think of us as a media department who looks after the image of responsible reptile keepers.
Absolutely. So with that being said, Tony, in this day and age of shock and awe, social media, you know, and I'm not trying to point the finger at anybody, but a lot of the most cringy videos I see are irresponsible people playing with, you know, venomous snakes, you know, large crocodiles and doing all this shock and awe stuff, which is not doing, it might do you personally good, but it's not good for our community. And when our community is gone, all your shock and awe stuff is going to be gone too. So you're trying to put responsible reptile keepers like Kat and myself and many others in a more positive light, minus the shock and awe. How about the shock and awe be how well we take care of our animals?
Exactly. And this is one of the problems that we've got, because our opponents have some very sensational stories to tell. They can say sensational things like, oh, everybody gets ill and the reptiles are suffering all the time and people get bitten. And that kind of sensationalism is supported by the sensationalist social media clickbait people. And nobody's really been putting across our side of the story, because it's actually a little bit difficult to do it, because our side of the story is, hey, there's no problem. I've got some cool lizards. Everybody's happy. Nobody's suffering, dying. And it's not so sensational. But
right.
One of the things we're good at is communication and getting the message across and making things sound compelling and sound interesting and useful. So it's kind of like a Venn diagram. You've got people who know about reptiles, people who know about the politics and the animal rights campaigners, and then you've got people who know about communication and how to get the story across. And in the middle, that's where we live. We live in the middle. We're experts at those things, and we help to present the truth about reptile keeping. And we're not completely ignorant of the fact that there are people who do things badly, and we don't support the people who do things badly. We've made videos such as, I don't know, we did one about obesity. Maybe don't feed your reptile so much that they get obese and ill. Maybe don't release your animals into the wild, because that comes back to bite us on the backside.
Absolutely.
Maybe don't let your snake slide through its own crap and then kiss it salmonella and give everybody a bad name. Like things like that nobody should be doing. That, it happens, but we want to educate people into doing things responsibly. And we hope that our members and the people who subscribe to our channel, who might not be as expert as you guys, they come and find you, and they find our community, and they find the responsible keepers out there, and they go, hey, that's good. I could do that. I could do better. I could improve. I could learn something. And that's what we try to do, to bring the community together to learn.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
So when I first met you, Tony, at Tinley Park, NARBC, we sat down, me, you, Waterloo. Were you there, Kat?
Yeah, I was right there.
Yeah.
we all sat outside, and we had our cigarettes or whatever you were smoking, and we had a great conversation, Tony. We kind of hit it off really well. So our communication was open and honest, and I see you're a very open and honest person, and your heart is deeply in this. And we need passion like that, to save this thing that we're in.
Well, let me tell you a story about that, because it's interesting. So I've worked with reptiles for almost 40 years. I won't go into the detail, but I've been around a few things. And part of that time has been me working as a journalist, writing for reptile magazines and pet trade magazines. And so part of that job is for me to have my finger on the pulse of what the animal rights campaigners are up to. So for a long time, I could see that there was a problem. And while we have organizations that do awesome work like USARC in the States, and we have REPTA, the Reptile and Exotic Pet Trade Association over here, and there's different ones in different parts of the world and in Europe, they do a great job and an important job with legislation. They fight the fires. If there's bad legislation, they put their cape on and put their underpants on the outside, and they fly to the rescue, and they do awesome work. Despite all of this, and you can help me with this one, Mike, I'm sure. I don't know. I think Kat's probably too young, but you're definitely old like me. So in the time that we've been,
I look. Okay.
I don't believe it. I don't believe it
either. I'm with you, Tony.
I'm turning 46. I'm turning 46.
I'm not listening. No. So you and I have been around a while, Mike, and we remember the old days, and we can see the advancements in welfare and husbandry and equipment that's come on in the last sort of 20, 30, 40 years. And it's amazing
Absolutely.
how far
Yep.
we've come. Yeah. So
Yeah.
answer me this question then. If we're so good at keeping reptiles today, and I do believe we are, and I do believe we're better than most pet keepers in the way we keep our pets, why do we have more trouble with animal rights campaigners and legislation today than ever before? Surely they should be leaving us alone because we do a great job. Well, as a communication specialist, I looked at this and I realized that a big part of the problem was something separate to the work that USARC do. The problem is the way that we as animal keepers are perceived by the general public because of the propaganda and the lies and the misinformation that animal rights campaigners put online. They talk about us, they tell so many lies about us, and they can say whatever they like about us. And in the last 20, 30, 40 years, and especially in the last 15, when social media has been important, what have we done about that? We've done largely nothing about it. We've just been over here enjoying our animals and working with our animals and enjoying what we do. Nobody's been really looking after the image of reptile keepers and exotic pet keepers and pet keepers in general online. They say what they like about us. They recruit the support of a naive public. They sow the seeds in legislators and politicians that we're the bad guys. We don't look after our animals. We do all this bad stuff. And it's bullshit. All of the politicians are primed and ready and drip fed this bullshit, set them against us. And then by the time Phil Goss gets there at USARC, he's got a load of work to do to change their minds. What we're hoping to do is set the record straight so that Phil Goss doesn't have so much work to do.
Very good. Smart. That's a good angle.
That's the idea.
Well, you know what? With that being said, Tony, it's like, yes, there's a lot of propaganda and BS talk out there with these legislatures. And if they had any ounce of integrity, this is an open invitation to anybody, any legislature, governmental official, man, come to my house. Come to my house and see what I do. See the way I take care of these animals. And if you don't leave with a better understanding of how most of this works, sure, there's bad, there's good and bad and everything, but most of us, we're doing really good by and for these animals. And you know, when you hear about well, you know, we're taking them out of the wild. Look, there hasn't been a Mertens monitor coming out of the wild in 50, 80 years, okay? I've produced over 250 of them. You're telling me my work is harmful? I think my work is beneficial to, you don't have to go to the wild to get Mertens monitors. Come to my house. I got plenty of them. Coming eye monitors, Togianus, green tree boas, whatever you want. You know, I think by us breeding them captive, number one, captive born and wild caught, it's two totally different animals. Captive born is carefree and very easygoing, and you know, it won't, like when you get, like, people say, oh, well, you charge so much. And I'm like, well, you know, you kind of get what you pay for. I said, and they say, but I see this online for $300. And I said, okay, you're going to take that wild caught animal. You're going to get him home. You're going to keep him at home for a couple of weeks. You're going to realize something ain't right with this animal. You're going to go to a vet. You walk in the vet's door, that's $500. The vet puts his hands on your animal. There's another $500. You're up to $1,300. You could have bought one from me for $2,000 and not had all that problem. And then with your wild caught animal, there's still a chance, if you're not experienced in how to establish these animals, it may die. So I think it's very good monitor wise. I mean, this is all monitor talk podcasts, so we keep it on the monitors mainly. But man, people out there with, you know, geckos and tarantulas and all the great work people are doing, the more animals we breed, the less comes out of the wild. So it's a win-win, but we got to get past that propaganda blockage that they throw at us. And it's propaganda, but I think it's more ignorance than anything. Because like I said, if they came to my house, Brian Waterloo's house, Kat's house, Tony's house, and just spent a couple of hours here, oh man, they'd walk away with, they'd be thinking to themselves, why did that guy not? I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about other legislatures and the rule makers. Why would they say that? That's not at all what this guy is doing. That's not at all what she does in her house. So,
Yeah.
I think what you're doing by spotlighting responsible reptile keepers is going to go a long way, spotlighting us, and then in the end, for the United States anyways, alleviating some of USARC's hard work that they have to put in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For
And
sure.
like
I mean,
that's oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Kat. There's a little bit of a delay, so I'll apologize to you guys and your audience if I butt in, because sometimes it sounds like you finished and then you haven't. It's just a delay. But what you've just said is exactly what one of the conversations I recently had with the EU Commission, as an organization working for the EU Commission that was investigating the illegal wildlife trade, and they wanted to know how to stop the illegal wildlife trade. And the headline story was that the wildlife trade is 26 billion pounds, and only behind drugs, guns, and people smuggling. So I looked at it, and it turns out that most of that 26 billion pounds is timber and plants. Yeah. And the bit that's animals is usually derivatives like dead animals for skins and leather and medicine and bushmeat and stuff like that. And then the live animals that are smuggled, most of those aren't smuggled from the wild. They're captive bred animals that have been, the paperwork's gone wrong, or somebody didn't fill their CITES in properly, and that becomes illegal trade then. So the amount that's actually smuggled is tiny, but they use that tiny number to talk about £6 billion worth of illegal trade. So I said, look, I can help you stop. Yeah, I can help you stop illegal wildlife trade in 3 years. And they said, how? I said, so what you do is you go into any animal that's endangered or any animal that's been illegally traded or smuggled, and you harvest a small number of those animals from the wild. And even the most endangered animal can probably withstand a small harvest, 6 or 10 animals, whatever. And then you give those animals to a passionate, knowledgeable, private breeder like yourself. They breed those animals and make them available. And maybe you have to pay an arm and a leg and your firstborn child to get those animals. And that money goes to conservation. But then when you've bred those animals, you make those animals available to private keepers. And what do I want? Do I want a wild caught illegal animal that's lots of risk? Or do I want a bomb-proof captive bred one from you? Nobody wants wild caught animals when there's a captive bred one available. So there you go. We've solved it.
Yeah. Well, so with that being said, Tony, tell me if I'm off base here, or maybe if this is something, maybe you might even be working on it already. Surely, like the people in the gun lobby, for example, a lot of those people are gun owners. A lot of those people like shooting. A lot of those people are hunters. But, they're paid by lobbyists to, it's like cut off your nose to spite your face. So what my thinking is, surely out of all the people involved through USARC, through responsible reptile keeping worldwide, surely some of these litigators or whatever the politicians, surely some of them have children that have a leopard gecko or something. Couldn't we somehow put a panel up where, we talk our passions and our animals and our points of view with, now, of course, I'm not saying like-minded, because they're not like-minded. They have an ulterior motive, but to get our points across, rather to counteract some of the propaganda they're being fed.
Yeah, there is a need to do that, but the issue we have is getting to the decision makers, and we have government working groups and organizations like USARC that will routinely have discussions with legislators. But one of the problems that we have is that the funding that's available to advocacy organizations like USARC and like REPTA is tiny compared to the funding that's available to PETA or HSUS or World Animal Protection. Last time I looked, they made 30 million pounds in. That's
Oh,
that's
wow.
probably $35 million in a year. You know, USR can nowhere near that. But regardless, they still manage to punch above their weight and win more than they lose because we use facts and information and evidence. You know, we don't win everything. It's impossible to win everything because the animal rights campaigners have so much money and so much influence and so much support behind them. Let me tell you about a story in Spain that happened recently. And I'm going to give you the punchline straight away because it's so shocking, is that ball pythons are banned in Spain, just banned. Yeah. The most popular pet snake on the planet, as far as I'm aware, are banned. And the way they were banned was because in 2017, somebody, and we don't know who, produced a research study that said that ball pythons could become invasive in Spain. And, you know, West African ball pythons, Mediterranean Spain, like that could happen. We all know it's BS, yeah? Everybody who looked at it knew that it was BS, and we all laughed at it, and we put it in a bottom drawer, and everyone forgot about it. Fast forward to 2019, there's a new Spanish government, and in a position of relative power was an animal rights campaigner who found this report and went, oh, cool, that means we can ban ball pythons. So they banned ball pythons overnight, basically. Now, the Spanish Herpetological Society was really upset by this. So they raised a bit of cash, got themselves a lawyer, took this to the High Court in Spain, and they gave that law a proper spanking. They produced expert witnesses, they produced scientific reports, they did a real job on it. And everybody thought that they'd win the case and the ban would be overturned. But at the end of it, the judge says, we're going to keep the ban. I understand what you're saying. The law is bad, and the research shows that the report was flawed, and we understand witnesses are good, but we're going to keep it anyway. And the reason they kept it was because of all the pressure from the animal rights campaigners, that they built up pressure in the government and in all the councillors and everyone else, and they just had to be seen to do something. Yeah, and in this time, Spain has turned into a nightmare. Ball pythons are banned, savanna monitors are banned, peninsula cooters are banned. There's positive lists in place. CITES haven't issued any paperwork for years. Everybody's trading illegally, doing it underground. Spain is an absolute nightmare. And these are the things that are, you know, maybe not today, but these are the things we have to be concerned about. And we've got to change people's minds.
So correct me if I'm wrong, Tony. The law, like you're speaking of in Spain, you know, they're beating their chest. They think they won. What they've done is they've created an underground market.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Exactly.
So it's whether they think they pounded their chest and they won, they didn't win. They're just driving it underground. Which is not, you know, I mean, that's not the right thing to do. But I mean, come on, we're not harming these animals. We're doing good by these animals, most of us, and it's just really bad. But you had also said something, Tony, that kind of, you know, I'm a very simple-minded guy, so you had said something, and we're talking about propaganda, and it's funny that you said this list is called what?
Okay, this list is called a positive list. It's also called it's called a white list. Now, I can explain to you what they are. We all know what a blacklist is. A blacklist is a list of things that you can't do. Right. A list of things that are not allowed. Yeah. A white list is the opposite. That's a list of things that are allowed. And a white list is the holy grail for animal rights, because they say that this positive list will solve all of those problems that we discussed earlier: welfare, conservation, invasive species, human harm, and all this stuff. But if they can't keep them, they can't keep them badly. If they can't keep them, then they can't let them out into the wild. If they can't keep them, then nobody gets bitten. So this positive list, this white list, is put forward as the holy grail of how to make everything right with animals. But what we know from experience of them being introduced in Europe, so let's use Norway as an example. Norway had an absolute ban on reptiles completely between 1977 and 2017. And then in 2017, they brought in a positive list of just 19 species that you can keep. Yeah. Before the positive list happened, the government did a survey, a report, and they worked out that there were at least 100,000 reptiles being kept illegally. And there was a whole system of stores and live food and mines that were supporting this illegal trade. So it doesn't get rid of it. But one of the problems with that, when things go underground, let's imagine I found myself an illegal monitor, Mike. It's illegal. I'm illegal. I can't call you up and say, hey, man, can you give me some advice on how to keep this illegal animal? Because I might get into trouble. And worse than that, I can't take that animal to a vet. So how is a positive list good for welfare? If you can't take it to a vet because it's illegal, that's a nightmare. But they don't care about that. They just want to stop you keeping them.
See, it's like I was saying before. It's underhanded. It's shady. It's deceptive. And like we were talking earlier, it's like if you're talking to somebody who's ignorant of things, you talk to them a certain way. However, if you're talking to somebody who's shady as shit and underhanded, now you got to come at them in a different way. So I guess what we can say is they're very underhanded in this. And, you know, most of the people in the reptile industry that I know, and I've been in this a long, long time, we're not shady people. We're not underhanded people. We want to give it to you straight.
Your animals.
Yeah, we love our animals. We want to give it to you straight. And how do you give it? How do you be giving it to someone straight who's two people that are underhanded hearing us, knowing they're going to come at us in an underhanded way, and we're just out in the open? It's very, it's disrespectful. It's it's
duplicitous.
Yeah, it's dishonest, and that's where things need to change. But I really do think in this current atmosphere of politics and everything, that the shadiness of these politicians and these people, it's no longer, you know, peekaboo shit. It's in your face, and people don't like that.
Yeah.
People don't like it.
Well, here's the thing. What we're trying to do is hold them accountable. So in the UK recently, there was a government report that was sent to government through one of the government working groups that made a recommendation about reptile enclosures for pet stores. And the recommendation was that these enclosures would be so big that every pet store would be put out of business. And it was unnecessary, unnecessarily large enclosures. So we created a documentary film that highlighted the process, highlighted how the government working group was infiltrated by animal rights campaigners, highlighted how they left out all of the reptile experts from that consultation, all the groups that have worked with government for 30 years. They left them out of the consultation, and they published a report that was entirely propaganda. So we produced a little documentary film that was like, oh, this is what happened. This is how they got that report through. Bear in mind that this has been done badly. And we know it was watched by people in government who knew that they needed to be aware that everybody knew what had happened. It was watched by governments in the Netherlands, in Holland as well. So the governments over there were keeping an eye on it, thinking, okay, we need to behave properly. Otherwise, we could end up in a documentary film. Because now we can hold them accountable for their bad action.
Oh,
but the lies that we're talking about are worrying. So did you ever see online the statistic that 75% of reptiles die in the first year?
I recently heard this, and my jaw hit the floor. I'm like, who came up with this?
I can tell you. So we all know just instinctively that that's bullshit. Yeah, we know instinctively that that's not right. So we looked at that research, and we found out that the people who put that research together really made some terrible, terrible methodology to their research. They underestimated the animals that came into the UK. They underestimated the number of animals alive and well in the UK. They underestimated the number that came in, and they came up with this 75% figure. So we could see that the report was rubbish. We've even got two other reports from very reputable organizations and people that give a very different story. And both of these reports were done separately, but they came up with more or less the same number. Just over 3% of reptiles die in the first year, which is probably more accurate by our own instinct, isn't it? Just 3%, not 75%. But this statistic gets sent round on social media, put on the mainstream media, and it was even said in a government working group at the European Parliament that I was at recently. So this statistic gets out there. So what we did is we produced a video that said, hey, you know, that 75% statistic, this is why it's BS, and this is the real report. And now, when our followers see that 75% bullshit online, they say, hey, no, that's not true. Here's a video from Responsible Reptile Keeping to prove it.
You give them ammo.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yep.
Because all of the keepers that we know want to support their hobby, want to defend ourselves from the bullshit, but they don't really have the time to create the content like we do. So what we do is we load it so that we make them armed and ready to hit that button and share our video when they see rubbish like that online. And we're doing that with lots and lots of different topics. And now we even had a journalist call us up and say, hey, I was going to write a story about that 75% thing, but you know, I've watched your video now, and can you tell me more about it? And we were able to be part of the consultation and part of the process. So instead of it being a one-sided story, they had our side of the story as well.
yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome that you guys can provide that information for people, you know, so that they can rebuttal.
You know, that reminds me, a couple of years ago, Tony, I was approached by, I think it's Channel 5 News in Florida, somewhere in Tampa. Somehow they got my number as being a monitor expert, and they showed me the video of a black throat monitor on a guy's front porch. And, you know, they're like, oh, these are invasive. And I'm like, well, you know, let me watch the video. So I watched the video, and I got back to the woman and I said, I think you're wrong on this one. I said, if that was an invasive animal that's been on the loose for any amount of time, you wouldn't be able to approach it. It wouldn't sit there. You wouldn't be able to reach down and pick it up. I said, the problem with this video is either somebody set this up with their animal, or somebody had lost a pet and you guys just happen to find it with your cameras. I'm telling you right now, if that was truly an invasive animal that's been in the wild for any length of time, you would never have seen it, because when it heard you coming, it would have been gone. And when you approached it, it would have been very defensive. I said, you approached that thing, and that lizard looked at you like, please take me back to my cage. I need water and food, you know, and they just tried to and they actually tried to get me. They tried to get me to spin. I'm like, no, I said, I won't do that. I said, but I will do the interview. But please, you got to keep what I'm saying in context, because you're being misleading with this particular animal. You're being very misleading. So they ran the story, and they kept my words pretty true. But again, they were still working the angle that it was an invasive animal. Yeah. And you know, I said my piece, but for whatever it was worth. But yeah, it's all deceptive.
But that adds balance, and you've hit on a point that's actually quite important there, Mike, in that we don't really know what the statistics are for pets or for pets that have escaped. So what we have in the UK is an organisation called the National Centre for Reptile Welfare, and they're probably the biggest reptile rehoming and rescue centre in the world. As far as I know, it's enormous. And what happens is, if anybody sees a reptile out in the wild, somewhere that it's not supposed to be, we get a phone call. Yeah. And it might be a stowaway in a consignment of goods from overseas. It might be a gecko in a suitcase. It might be an escape. And so a phone call comes through to the NCRW, and then NCRW put on the internet, hey, there's this lizard somewhere in Birmingham or in Liverpool or wherever. Can one of our supporters go and find it, please? And the fastest response we've had is less than 3 minutes. In less than 3 minutes, we've had somebody there dealing with it. And the longest one we've had, never had anything over half an hour. And we've only ever had one animal that disappeared before we could find it. So what we're able to do with this information is compile a database of statistics that give really accurate, useful, honest and truthful information to those who want to make laws about these situations. So, which brings me on to a point I wanted to make. In the UK, we have lots of data that we can use from National Centre for Reptile Welfare. We also have a couple of surveys that run each year, and they give us lots of information and data about reptiles and reptile keeping. We know how many people keep reptiles, what species they keep, the numbers they keep, what they keep them in, where they bought them from, were they captive bred or wild caught, do they breed them, how long have they been keeping them for, all of this data. And we've got all this data we can use when we're talking to government or when we're producing content for responsible reptile keeping. So as an international organization, we looked around the world for data and it just doesn't exist. And that was a frustration to us. So what we've done and what you might have seen is we launched the Worldwide Reptile Super Survey, which basically takes one of those surveys that we have in the UK and we repurpose to be a little bit easier to interact with and a little bit quicker to fill in. And we've repurposed it internationally and we've sent it out on the 1st of January. It runs till the end of March. And what we need is to get for as many people as possible to fill in that survey. It's all anonymous. Nobody's going to come looking for the animals that you keep. It's all done anonymously, but it gives us data that we can use to speak truth to governments when they're asking questions. And that's vital.
So
give that information to USARC.
Where can we find that survey for everybody that's watching right now? Where can we find the survey and complete it for you?
Well, real quick, before you do that, Tony, and hold that thought. So I don't know, man. I'm from the old school, and you know, I mean, I'm a little government guy. I don't, you know, I want the government to be as small as possible, stay the F out of my business. So by you putting a list of all, I mean, dude, with social media, they all know what we have anyways. But
exactly
putting this list, putting your name on this list, is it not compiling a dossier on yourself to where if they ever stop this stuff, they can come and say, oh, well, you said you had 3 boas. I mean, could they use this list possibly against us ever? It's my paranoid thinking.
And it's a good paranoid thinking. You should think like that. We'll come on to that in a moment. But certainly, no, this is an anonymous survey. If you want to join, if you want to fill it in and win a prize, you can give us your email address. But I'm not asking your name. I'm not asking, you know, where you live. I'm not asking for any identifying features. We're giving prizes away for people who fill it in. So there's 3 prizes. You can win $500, $300, or $100 to spend on reptile kit. And if you want to win the prize, give us your email address. Apart from that, just fill it in anonymously. It's nobody's going to come at you with a list of things that you keep. And when people are creating legislation, they're not looking at individual species. What they want to do is say, you're allowed to keep these few things. So in Norway, their positive list is only 19 species. It's not like anybody's going to be compiling a list of species from our list. But what it does do, if they come and say to us, okay, we're creating a positive list and we're going to ban all of these thousands of animals. So in the UK, we know that there are at least 1,400 species of reptiles and amphibians being kept, according to the survey. So if the government wants to come along and ban loads of species of reptile, just look at how many people they're going to piss off. Do they really want to piss off that number of people? We need to explain that this isn't a niche hobby anymore. We're mainstream. We're doing good work. Most of the progression of herpetology, science, conservation for reptile equipment and husbandry, it's the private keepers that did that. It wasn't the zoo. It wasn't the researchers, it wasn't the scientists, it was private keepers who have made all that progress, and we need to be celebrating that. And by explaining all the work we do with the different species, that's how we convince government to think, wow, yeah, that's something pretty cool. We need these guys on side. And that's where we're headed with this.
Good.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I mean, us reptile keepers, I mean, we keep them for a reason. I mean, we are very passionate about these animals, you know, like I mean, the more that you promote that idea and the more you put that out there for people to see, I mean, that's actually why I started my my YouTube channel like a million years ago, because I wanted to show people this other side of, my passion for these
Responsible
animals,
keeping.
the love.
Responsible
Yeah,
keeping.
and like I would just try to show like how awesome they were and how nice they were and how great they could be. And, like, and people would get on there and like message me and comment that like didn't have pet reptiles. And it made them think about getting them. And they were like, wow, this is really awesome. I never knew that reptile keeping could be like this.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Rewarding pets, So
Well, one of the things we also do.
Okay, go on, Tone. No, go ahead.
Oh.
It's your show. Do it.
So one of the things we also is on the 1st of every month on our social media, we run a project called My Reptile Pick. And this is where people just take a selfie with their reptile because they're proud and they put it online. And the reason we do that is because the animal rights campaigners are trying to pressure social media platforms to stop people posting images of reptiles because they say it's animal abuse and they say it normalizes reptile keepers. And we say, hey, that sounds like a great idea. Let's normalize reptile keeping. Let's everybody just splash social media with pictures of the animals that they love to show how much they love them and how important it is. And when you were asking where you can fill in the survey, it's difficult not to find us. If you type responsible reptile keeping into any platform, you can get on our website. There's a little pop-up. You can go and fill in the survey. But we're on LinkedIn, we're on YouTube, we're on Facebook, we're on TikTok, we're on Insta, we're everywhere. Just type in responsible reptile keeping. Please in the survey. We need as many respondents as we can get. It's important. And if you want to do My Reptile Pick, 1st of every month, we need a photo of you and your cheesy grin with your favorite pet reptile. What we really need, because we need to show everybody what we do and not be embarrassed by it because we're doing good work.
Okay, so I don't know. I want to do this. It's almost, I'm going to call it a battle cry for USARC. So you had made mention some organization over there in the European arena that when somebody says, oh, I saw a Savannah monitor in Berkshire, somebody runs over there and you have that. It's that what I'm saying. So this brings me to I forget the exact thing, but it was the St. Valentine's Day massacre or whatever with the pythons and then the accidental death of the boa. Now, when that all happened, I was so freaking appalled. And most people say, oh yeah, that's not what had me. What had me is the nepotism in Fish and Wildlife and these government agencies, the nepotism that you have ignorant people going out and doing such a critical job that can't tell the difference between a boa and a python. I think whenever they're called to do their job, again, this is a battle cry for USARC and its members, that I'm sure if they said we're going by Joe Blow's house December 5th, and USARC put a blast out that said, hey, anybody available to go, and of course, we'd have to regulate it somehow so you didn't get, 50 people showing up at the guy's house, but somebody qualified or whatever to stand over, and as soon as that guy touched that cage door and say, dude, what are you doing? Well, I got to put this. No, that's a boa. You have no business touching that animal.
Like, it was labeled as a boa, and they saw it, and they still did it anyway.
Here's the story I tell of one time. I got to kind of watch what I'm saying too. One time, I mean, I'm not doing anything illegal now, but I wanted to do the right thing, and I had a bunch of turtles that I wanted to keep. They all in my state needed to have permits, so I did the right thing. I got my permits. Everything was fine. And I knew it would happen one day. They'd come and check and see what I had. So an officer came to my house. Of course, it's a Fish and Wildlife or Conservation Department, whatever it was. But he's looking through all my animals, and everything, talking to the guy, everything was good, and he pulls out like a ticket book. And I'm like, what do what's going on? He goes, well, you can't have venomous reptiles. I'm like, yeah, I know, that's why I don't have any. He goes, there's a green mamba in that, in an opaque plastic drawer. I'm like, what? He goes, yeah. I could tell that's a green mamba. I said, a green mamba. I said, I got kids running around here. You got guns on your hips, and you think I have a venomous animal in my house? So I opened up the drawer and I pulled it out, and he's like, put that thing away. I'm like, this is a Western green rat snake, buddy. And he's like, oh. I'm like, so that's the problem. They hire their cousin's uncle's nephew's brother who don't know anything about nothing, and they put these people in positions of power, and now they come out and they're clueless. That's another problem. They need to really have qualified people in their organizations.
Yeah, we have a similar issue in the UK. So there's been a recent swathe of legislation that legislates all animal activities, whether you're a dog groomer, a fish breeder, a reptile store, a dog walker, or anybody, or a stables. This new legislation covers everybody, and there are guidelines for all aspects of that part of the legislation. For instance, pet stores are legislated, and you have to understand and comply with all these guidelines. Most of it ridiculous and useless, I should add, and we're just in the process of reviewing it, but nonetheless it's guidance there, it's the law. So what we have is inspectors coming out and inspecting stores, going into my buddy's pet store. He's had a pet store for like 20 years. He knows his stuff, and telling him how he should be doing things. And he's like, firstly, that's not good. Secondly, that's not true. And third, it's not even in the guidance. It's just your uninformed opinion. So I'm just going to ignore what you say. And thankfully, we have a process in place that helps us to get around that kind of stuff. But usually people are intimidated. And, when I ran a pet store back in the late 90s, somebody reported us because our chameleon didn't have a water bowl. And I said, well, if I put a water bowl in with that chameleon dies in the water bowl. Yeah, it's never seen water in its native habitat, so we don't do that. And once he realized I knew what I was talking about, he kind of back a little bit, and he's walking around and he said, hey, that's a nice indigo snake. And I said, yeah, consider it's a Sanzinia Madagascan boa that I haven't changed the label on yet. And he couldn't identify any snakes. And I was like, look, man, it's bad that you come here trying to tell me to do my job when you don't know what you're talking about. So, if you need, and within a few weeks, he was back asking me my advice on a different topic. So I was nice to him. And then he used me as a resource, which is better situation. But fools doing jobs they can't do.
Yeah. And it's just like anything, if you do something wrong and you're legitimately caught, and then you've done wrong. You should pay the price, whatever that may be. But to be hassled over something that somebody in their head believes is a problem, yet is no problem. I truly believe that most reptile keepers know more about the laws than these people who come out to enforce these laws. Obviously, since that massacre thing, that guy's voice haunts when he says, "No, not the boa," that haunts my head. To hear that guy's voice, it was so heartbreaking, man. It knows, we made a mistake. No, dude, you didn't make a mistake. A mistake is if I accidentally trip you out my door. Okay, you didn't make a mistake. You didn't know what you were doing. You were ignorant to what you were doing, and you caused incompetent, and you caused irreparable damage. And what are you going to, and what he kept saying, oh, the state will make it right. The state ain't going to bring that animal back to life. That's the only way to make it right.
Yeah.
We have, there was a similar situation in Spain, in the Canaries recently, where, as I said, the Spanish government changed, and all of the CITES got moved along to another department, and they brought in a new load of CITES officials who all seem to have an animal rights agenda. And what they started doing was raiding animal keepers and animal breeders around the country who had been compliant with CITES laws for decades. They knew all the CITES officers, but the new CITES officers misinterpreted and reinterpreted the law, and they went and raided people. One of the things they did was they raided and seized about €250,000 euros worth of animals, probably $250,000 worth of animals from a buddy of mine, shipped them all out to rescue centers where they all died, of course.
Absolutely.
Another thing they did was they raided some parrot breeders in Spain and seized all their animals. And when they didn't know how to keep them and they started dying, there was a big problem. The bad thing for CITES was that instead of it being one guy's collection, it was actually 11 guys who'd all loaned this one guy animals to breed. So they pissed off 11 people. One of them was a lawyer, and so they took it to court, and the judge told them told them, the CITES officials, that they were wrong. And yeah, that was a major win to try and tell uninformed officials to do their job and not to overreach, and to be careful how they behave. So that was good. We did a video about it.
Yeah, very good. So we're coming on to around an hour. Of course, Tony, like we said, around that table at Tinley Park, Kat, you, me, Brian Waterloo, we could talk for hours on this stuff. We will have you back to check the progress of all this. But before we get too long, you had made mention about a documentary film that shines us in a good light. Can you please, before we go here, everybody knows how to get a hold of you at Responsible Reptile Keeper. How do we find this documentary film and some of these other outlets that you were talking about?
The documentary that I was discussing with you before we went on air isn't released yet. We'll be releasing that over the next few weeks. We have a series of mini documentaries made by a buddy of ours called Adler. And
good guy.
A lot of your, he's a good guy. A lot of your friends over there will know him. So we're releasing his series of mini documentary films that show reptile keepers with their animals and how much they love them and the work that they're doing. And there's another one where you're in it, if I remember correctly, just shining how awesome the Tinley show is and stuff like that. But our website and our YouTube channel and our social media is absolutely jam-packed with content that we've already produced. We produce podcasts, we produce a magazine, we produce videos, we produce interviews, we produce documentaries, and they're all on our social media. And as I say, the idea is that we get to tell our side of the story. And by informing people who had the wrong idea about reptiles or didn't know anything about reptiles, helps them to understand what we do better and helps stop the animal rights campaigners' propaganda from taking hold. So that if we can let people know what the truth is, then we would hope that some of the problems that would otherwise have ended up as legislation and landing on Phil Goss's desk don't arrive there. We're hopefully going to be collaborating quite closely with USARC. I've spoken with Phil Goss a lot. He's really supportive of what we do. What we do in media goes hand in hand with what they do in government and legislation. And
absolutely.
If we can take guidance from them about what the best use of our resources are, which are the hot topics that they want us to address, should we do a video about this one specific problem that's happening over there, we can work really hard to help them do their, help them be successful at what they do as well, because what they do is vitally important.
It sounds to me like that's a collaboration that needs to happen. Like you said, I'm going to have Phil Goss on here in 2025 sometime. We haven't set a date yet.
Cool.
But, I mean, again, this is all monitor talk. But, man, the information that you have given us today, Tony, thank you so much. We all got to get in this together. It's the only way we're going to win is if we stand united and, show our passions. And I try to say to people who, they're hobbyists, like me, and they'll accidentally get bit and they'll put it on social media. I'm like, dude, take that down. That's not the kind of stuff we need. But unfortunately, in today's society with social media, the shock and awe seems to get all the attention. However, when I do say this to some of the people that I see doing this stuff, they do take it down and they do understand. Some people don't, but some people do. So we all got to work together in this.
You've just hit a nail on the head that is really important. The way if you put 20 reptile keepers in a room together and you ask them for their opinion, you'll get 30 different opinions. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we're not all the same, but we're all actually in it for the same reasons. And the infighting amongst reptile keepers is quite damaging, and it's something that we've tried to prevent and counteract. My wife created the strapline for responsible reptile keeping, which is together we can make a difference. And this is what we need to do, work together. I think that one of the biggest threats that we have in our community, and I say our community, it's the people who say that only they're good enough to keep reptiles, the people who slag off reptile keepers, the people who slag off pet stores that don't, all pet stores, when very few pet stores are bad. Most of them are pretty good. The people who slag off breeders, the people who slag off the reptile trade. Yes, there are bad actors, but on the whole, it's a net force for good. On the whole, we're doing pretty good work. On the whole, it's a really wholesome part of pet keeping, and we can only fight the animal rights campaign as our enemies if we work together. And that's what we're trying to do, to unite us all.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So here we are. We're at an hour. Tony Wigley, Responsible Reptile Keeping. Thank you so much for coming on. You can find you can find him on any of the social medias. I mean, literally, he named them all. Some I didn't even know existed. So, Responsible Reptile Keeping, go. There's a survey. Take the survey.
That's important.
Be it unanimous or, put the email address. Like he said, there's a couple of prizes on the table, which is very cool. Everybody likes winning prizes. But Tony, man, I've been dreaming of this day to have this conversation with you out in the open. We did it at Tinley, and you're just such a great guy, such a smart mind, and we need that. We need that. You're a great leader for this, and man, you're so eloquently spoke, and I thank you for coming on.
Yeah,
that's just my English accent.
Yeah, you're a great dude, man. But, and again, let me say one more thing, Kat. Today was your flagship launching. I think you've done great. And,
I just let you guys do your thing, I was actually very engaged listening to everything that Tony was saying,
Absolutely.
I think it's really great stuff.
Absolutely.
And I'm really glad that you're here to tell everybody about it, and hopefully
Thanks,
get
Kat.
more people to help out and realize what's going on. Kat. And I think it's really great.
Well, on that note, if I can just have 30 seconds to
absolutely
let people know what they can do to help us do what we need to do.
Please.
So essentially we have a problem with animal rights campaigners. We all know that the social media and media aspect of this is a big problem that we need to address. So if we all agree that, then the question is, what are we going to do about it? And there's three things that your viewers can do. So the first thing is they can join us as a member. It's really cheap. It's like the cost of a cup of coffee. They can join us as a member, or they can join for more if they want to. But the more members we have, the more we can say that we speak for these people when we speak to government. One thing I always say is, if you support US ARC, do not give us any money that you would have given to US ARC. Do not take funding from US ARC to give it to us. That's not how it works. We can only support US ARC. So that's the first thing they can do. They can join us as a member. The second thing they can do is buy the products of the companies that support us. You can go on our website. You can see all the major brands are supporting us. A lot of the American business are supporting us. Those people, those companies that support us, they understand the mission, they get it, they know it's important. We think they deserve your business. Do business with those people. The third thing you can do, and this is probably the most important, is to share the shit out of our stuff. yeah, is to like it, comment on it, share it, because that's what gives the algorithm, gets the algorithm excited, tells the algorithm to share it more. Our success, we can only be successful if people see our content. We can only be successful if people are influenced by what they see from us. So the best thing you can do for us is share our content, like it, subscribe, do whatever you can to make sure that the algorithm knows that what we're doing is important. And what it'll also do is it'll reassure the companies that support us that we're doing a good job and we're getting that message out there. So every time they go on social media, they're like, hey man, responsible reptile keeping are doing stuff again. Here they are again in my feed. They know that we're doing good work and they continue to support us. We can only succeed if people share. We can only succeed if people join. So that's what you can do to help us, and we'll do everything we can to support US ARC along the way as well while we're at it.
Absolutely. Well, your vision is quite refreshing, and man, I thank God for a man like yourself and your organization. You know, you're doing good. You're doing good for our community, and our community has long been overlooked. And like you said, we're not, you know, underground people. We're in your face. We're open. We love and, you know, we nurture these animals. There's no reason to be, you know, underground. We're out in the open. We believe in what we're doing is good work for our animals, for animals in general. So thank you for taking the lead in this, Tony. And again, Kat, my co-host Jen Squatch, she's a little under the weather, having some health issues. So in the meantime, we have Kat sitting in. Much love to you, Jen. Get well. And again, thank you, Kat. Thank you, Tony. And I'm sure I'll see you around at Tinley this year, right?
You will. We're actually coming over to the USA for a couple of months in September, October, and November, probably. So what I'm hoping is that we can sit down for a beer and put the world to rights next time I'm there.
Well, I would love for you to come to the house and see the animals.
I would love that as well, my friend. That's an invite I will hold you to.
Absolutely. Not a problem. I'm a good cook, too, so I'll make you some good Italian food.
Mate, I'm getting on a plane tomorrow. I'll see you there.
Okay, sounds good. So, okay, from Kat, take us out. Thanks again, Tony.
All right, so thank you guys so much for watching today, and be sure to click on the like button and subscribe. And we will see you next week. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you, Tony. Thanks, Kat. Thanks, MJ.
Hold on, I can't find this thing. Sorry, having technical difficulties here.
I spoke too soon. Kat, you're fired.
I'm trying. Okay, I found us. Okay, goodbye for real this time, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Tony, you can stay backstage for a minute, all right?
I got you.
Okay, Kat, do you know how to click it over?